December 9th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. Colleen, please note that all board members are present with the exception of Sherry Barnes. Do we have anybody have for public comments today, Dr. Lee?
No, Mrs. Ward, no one has signed up since the last time I checked in with you, I take it?
Correct.
Okay, let's see. Do we have a bunch of people on right now?
Looks like there are 2 attendees.
Okay, let's go through our discussion items first, Dr. Lee, and then we'll switch into executive session here before I don't want to kick everybody off right at the beginning. So,
Okay. Okay, I think, Mr. Passetti, are you there?
I am. Give me 1
Okay.
second. Yep, sorry about that.
It's okay. Okay, so the first item on our discussion items was our COVID-19 update / return to learn. So I asked Mr. Passetti to share some information with you. And then we have, as we noted, we were going to survey our parents again, and Dr. Zwemke, excuse me, will give an update of the results so far. And then obviously we'll take questions. Mr. Passetti?
Yeah, and obviously right now we're on a pause. We have some students coming in the building, but very limited. So our numbers do reflect that. Our students that are in building, as far as COVID positive numbers, we have 2 staff members this week that tested positive for COVID, and 3 students that were in session that tested positive for COVID. And as far as quarantine numbers, we have 13 current staff members on quarantine and 24 students, and those are all in-house, whether they're students or staff. So those numbers reflect that per se. There are new proposed guidelines from the CDC, but we are not. Those guidelines currently are not being recommended by the Grundy County Health Department. So right now we are sticking with the current guidelines as far as quarantine time out.
Mr. Passetti, can you refresh my memory compared to the week before Thanksgiving, before we went to full remote? I know you just said we have 2 positive and 13 quarantine. How is that number of staff compared to before break?
Yeah, before break, as far as positive cases, we had 7 teachers positive and 10 students. And I don't think, just to kind of reiterate, the COVID positive hasn't been our biggest challenge. Obviously, it's serious. It's always been how we have to deal with the symptoms. That's really been our biggest challenge with staffing. With cold and flu. Anytime that situation comes up, whether it's a student or a staff member, we have to treat it as possible COVID. So really, that's been our biggest challenge. Our COVID numbers, as you see, are not through the roof. They're not terrible. Most of the COVID positive cases are getting through family members or outside of school. It's just the fact of the process of anytime someone has a symptom, how we have to deal with it. That's really our biggest challenge right now. And that's a good thing, I guess, with the situation.
How many quarantines did we have before break? For the staff, not for students.
Yeah, for the staff before break, we had 27. Right now we have 13. But
Okay.
with that, and with that 13, if we did have students in the building, so we have 13 on quarantine, but we also have 19 staff members. Let's say we had our students back right now. We have another 19 staff members that would be out due to previous health diagnosis or childcare issues due to 201 not being in session. So at 14, if we had students in, would look more of a 30 plus staff out right now.
All right, thank you.
Joan, what's the what's the difference in what the CDC is recommending and what Grundy County Health is expecting us to do?
So the CDC is kind of going from 10 days if you're positive to 7 days if you don't have any symptoms, and a negative or if you don't have any symptoms. And then the 14 days would go down to 10 days without any symptoms and a negative COVID test. There's some other little pieces into that, but right now the Grundy County is not adopting that and is letting us know that that's not something we should be doing at this time.
And so they can just do that even if the CDC changes, they don't have to?
Yeah, but even with the Illinois Department of Public Health, there's kind of a note underneath that they don't recommend this for places that as a congregate location, like a school where there's lots of people in an area.
If I remember right, Joe, the IDPH specifically said to reach out to your local health department for guidance in some of these situations. Is that not correct?
That is correct. And yes, and that's what we've been doing. And we've been doing that all along, really following obviously the IDPH and more importantly, our local health department.
So I'm curious, because I know somebody who ran across this situation, and I know it's going to happen at the high school or anywhere else for that matter. What are we doing? Okay, so somebody has COVID. They get their negative test. They come back to work. A month later, they're exposed to somebody who now just tested positive for COVID. And you certify on the self-certification, and it says if you've been around anybody, and you have to answer yes, and it gives you the big red X. So what does the health department recommend in situations like that? Or anybody for that matter?
Yeah, that's a continual issue. We have staff members out multiple times because of close contact, because of symptoms. Unless they've tested positive, once they test positive, you get a 90-day kind of window where. That's what I'm referring to. So like now you have somebody who tested positive, they went through the quarantine, then they got their negative test and they come back to work. And then on Tuesday, they found out that somebody that they were around just tested positive. So now if they answer the questions correctly, it's going to give them a red X. What are we doing with that? Are they calling? And yes, we follow up with every staff member that has a red X, and we follow through with that and let them know that they're okay to come to work because they have already been exposed to COVID.
Because of that 90-day window. Okay, good.
So do you just kind of like force place a green X then for them? Is that what you kind of do? After you call them, you just sort of do like a force place green X or whatever the color. Okay.
Yeah, we'd walk them through kind of why they can come into work and walk them through that. And yep, so there's that 90-day period where they can come in.
Cool.
Good.
And one thing that Mr. Passetti mentioned about the guidance, the new guidance from CDC and the Grundy County Health Department certainly did communicate that they are not yet recommending that we modify our exclusion or return protocol, and that they have received information that the way that they understand it is that the IDPH and ISB will soon be issuing new school guidance for students and staff. So we'll wait and see if that does come to fruition.
Dr. Lee, your understanding or assumption on that, do you think it's going to come out before we go on break?
I do not know that. I couldn't give you a guess on that one.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions for Joe or myself? Dr. Zwemke, would you discuss our preliminary results of our Return to Learn survey?
Sure. Good evening, everybody. We sent second semester survey out last Friday, and then again this week. We've had so far 1,390 responses. So we'll continue to send that out prior to winter break for parents. Of those, nearly 1,400 respondents, 921 or 66% have indicated they want hybrid learning. 469 or 33, nearly 34% have indicated they want remote instruction. And then from there, there's a variety of other questions. How comfortable are you with your student going to in-person school every day this spring? If there are health and safety measures like social distancing, 46.5% very comfortable, 19.6% not at all comfortable, 14 a little comfortable, nearly 20% mostly comfortable. The difference between this survey that we're doing for second semester than what we did for first semester is really indicating to our parents that we're looking at second semester in 2 chunks from January 18th through spring break. And then we will resurvey at the beginning of March to talk about how to close out the school year between April and May. The thought process behind that was to give families, the first time we surveyed was you had to make that choice for the entire semester, and the door really only swung one way. If you were hybrid, you could go remote, but if you were remote, you couldn't come back hybrid. And we made some exceptions to that, so we wanted to modify that time down in case people changed their mind throughout the semester. We saw trends of that this semester. What kind of questions can I answer for you?
So out of those 1,400 responses, you have 66% that want to do hybrid now, and you also have 66% that would like to see them back in person.
66, right. Yes, is the same question.
Well, I thought the one was you had 921, 66% that would want to go into hybrid.
Correct.
But then the question about would you want your child in person full time, right? With social distancing?
That's not an option that we're offering for our families right now. We're asking. Right.
Wait, I took the questionnaire, and I thought one of the questions was how comfortable would you feel having your student back to school as long as social distancing was.
Correct. We asked that question, but not as like an option choice right now. We have the hybrid, the remote, but not an everyday option. We wanted to gauge where people would be based.
Right, exactly. So my point is,
I understand, sorry.
66% want hybrid, would want hybrid as opposed to remote. Right. Currently, and 66% would also feel comfortable having their student in every day with social distancing. I know that's not an option right now.
Right.
That's what you're getting back as a result out of the 1,400 responses. So right. my point is the same 66% that want to see their students, I'm assuming, hybrid also are willing to let their student go back to school full time.
I think that's a good assumption, yeah.
Okay, so I think that's a good, I think that tells a lot as far as I'm concerned. And that is 66% of parents want their kids back in school.
So when is spring break this year?
Last week in March.
So that's what you're talking about, January 18th through that last week of March, staying hybrid, and then potentially wanting to come back full time.
I think what we're looking at right now is that group coming back hybrid, and then if we're gonna continue to stay in hybrid, we would survey again. We just want to see as much data as we can on what parents are indicating right now.
But but your thought process, it wouldn't happen until after spring break. I thought I heard you say that. Did I misunderstand?
Correct. We want to survey in 2 chunks to have an indication of where we were at. As we went into Thanksgiving break, our numbers started to go more towards remote. And so the thought was, if we're staying in hybrid, we wanted to be able to have kind of 2 ways parents can do hybrid for the rest of the school year. Were they going to take more of a remote approach coming back from winter break, and then later on in the summer, later on in the spring, they want, in April, May, experience more in person. We just wanted to be able to survey to see where our families were at.
I just think, I think that from this survey that you just did, our parents are telling you what they want. Am I reading this wrong, or am I do you understand what I'm saying? If we have 66% right now that want to do hybrid.
Correct.
And you also have 66% that say they want to send their student back full time. I'm getting, as a parent of a student, it's very frustrating for me because there's no indication. All the studies that have been done show that the students, I'm not agreeing with this. I'm just going to be honest with you. And I think I've been this way the whole year, basically. I mean, this has really, really become very difficult for parents who have kids in school. And I mean, for the kids, I don't mean the parents, for the kids. I've had so many parents tell me about the toll it's taking on the kids. And I just don't understand, if we have the majority of our parents want to send their kids back to school, why we want to wait until after spring break to do that. And I know you didn't say for sure, but I do not agree with that at all. We have no idea what's going to happen come January. Those numbers might fall off. I mean, that's just my opinion. That's how I feel. I don't know how everyone else feels. I'm very frustrated as a parent of a student in high school.
Patty, I'm not going to lie. I've spoken to a lot of parents that are very frustrated as well, because their students their children are suffering. They're struggling, and it's very difficult.
It's just getting worse and worse.
It is, and so, and I don't think that anything that we're talking about tonight is going to be written in stone. And whether Dr. Zwemke said that he wouldn't encourage anything before spring break, that could change tomorrow, for God's sakes, like what you said, because if the numbers drop off and the guidance comes back and it's lifted, but we're not going to wait just because we made a plan. We're going to react to it. I think that for planning purposes is where he's looking. Let's do this in 2 chunks, and after that comes back and the numbers start dropping off, well, heck, I think he's just looking for a little bit more support. Not trying to put words in your mouth, Brian, but I think that I totally agree. They need to get back in school as quickly as they can, but we also have to follow the guidance that's out there.
I don't disagree with anything anybody is saying, but say we were to go back immediately after winter break, do we have the staff to cover it comfortably?
Joe, how would you respond to that based off our right now?
Under the current guidance that we're given and how we have to handle things, I mean, I agree. We want students in school. I don't know how we would do it. I really don't under the current guidance. And I've said this from the start, our COVID numbers are not bad. Obviously COVID is very serious, but it's the process that we have to go through for every student. I think it would just be extremely difficult.
Part of the reason we want to look at this into 2 kind of chunks is, should the numbers change and situation improves, we didn't want to tell families, well, you already chose remote, sorry you can't, like we did first semester. We ultimately didn't need that precaution. And some schools went a semester route. Essentially, we're doing about a 9-week route. But again, we've been approving anybody from remote to hybrid. It's just kind of state your case, let us know where you're at. The other thing that I would look at is we currently right now we have one just came in, 1,391. So I think as we look at this a week from now, We may have, 2,500 results by then and could provide a little bit of a better picture of where we're at right now. Right now, it's a snapshot. The survey hasn't been up very, very long.
And
Brian, what is the deadline for the survey? Parents have to when?
We asked we'd like it completed before winter break.
And on average, what is the percentage when we send out surveys that we on average receive back?
I don't know specifically on a number of surveys, but in this case, these return to learn surveys, they come back completed.
Yeah.
So
At
we
what level?
expect the remaining parents to weigh in one way or the other so that we could have a clear sense of what the ask is.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And with regards to that, Dee, when we met as an administrative team on Monday, we already had, I think it was the better part of 500 responses just over the weekend. And then now we're at much more than that after Brent sent out the standalone. So we'll continue to send that out, and we look to have a lot more numbers come next week.
Obviously, today's the 9th, so we're looking at 40 days essentially before our current time frame, I guess, for high or remote is up. But I definitely don't want to sit here and make anything decided or even suggest what we should do in this circumstance, because 40 days can change a lot of things. If we have any possibility whatsoever of bringing kids back in this building on the 19th, I want to do that.
I agree. As soon as we can get these kids back in school, like I said, I appreciate everything that our administration is doing. Joe Cassetti, phenomenal job. I don't know how you do it. And I understand the pause for staff, but let's keep trying. Let's keep trying. These kids have got to get back in.
I don't think there's anybody in this meeting that doesn't want these kids back in school as quickly as possible. So that's our goal. That's the focus. So hopefully the next 3 or 4 weeks will change things. It's very, very difficult to expect things to change that quickly when you read articles coming from our local government and our national government that says postpone your holidays and don't make long-term plans. And then we're going to talk about sending kids back early. It's just, it doesn't mix in my mind very well, even though I know they say it doesn't spread in school, but it still gets into school. But we'll see what the next 20 days does, and we'll go from there.
Mr. Passetti, thank you for all the stuff you're doing, all the work you're
Thank you,
putting in.
Mr. Passetti.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dr. Lee, I think we're going to move on to the cultural assessment, and then we'll go into executive after that, so we can finish up and come out.
Okay. So in your board packet and on the board packet online, we did put together a recommendation for our task force or special committee. And I did outline the recommendation, received some feedback after our last meeting, and did adjust this a skosh and did asterisk where we did adjust it. And then also included a proposed timeline, as well as I know one of the questions Mrs. Cry had asked some time ago was how to get that communication out to stakeholders, and spoke with Mr. Edwards and Dr. Zwemke and Mr. Troy about that, and then did put together a task force application as well with the cover letter. And in looking at this, first of all, I just ask if there are any questions or additional feedback that you guys may have.
I have just one. I noticed when I was looking at the possible members of the task force, it says preference will be given to residents of 111. Is there a reason we're considering someone who lives outside of the district?
Well, I guess my only thought process would be if we didn't have two separate alumni members that live within the community that volunteered.
So that option is only last case if we don't have somebody else.
That would be my thought process on it. Yes.
That's
Okay.
what I would support as well.
Okay, as long as
I
that's
agree.
the last case scenario, then I'm okay with it.
Same.
Are there any other questions on this?
So if I can just ask, is the task force, just from what we've seen at the board meetings, past board meetings, is the task force being put together to come to an understanding that works well for everyone? Or is it to come together to see how to seamlessly dismantle or to move away from the mascot? Because I guess I'm just trying to understand that, I know that more specifically, one or two, louder voices that's been for, completely doing away with it. Is it our understanding that that's where we're moving towards, or the hope is to find equal ground that works for everyone?
Well, my thought process on it was that, and I spoke to our school newspaper today, the Peace Pipe Chatter, who's doing a story on this, and they said, "What do you want as superintendent of this school district? What do you want most as a result of this task force?" And my response was that what I would like to see is, as I outlined in that proposal, that I thought we would have a meeting with a speaker about the harm that some of the studies show, and we would have a speaker about the importance of educating students on Native Americans and not eradicating the logos and mascots. And then the third one would be to look at some ways, really exactly what the recommendation from the cultural assessment was, is that how can we communicate respect as a result of the mascot being. But a long story short is that I think that as we get all of those groups together, and maybe a loud voice or two, as you mentioned, and being a transparent committee, is that my goal is that we just seek to understand and understand what all sides are coming from. And maybe if we do that, we can move forward and be more inclusive in practices. I don't know, as just a facilitator, if that says, well, we're not changing a thing, or we're changing, or what are some ways that we can make sure that we are a more inclusive environment, and some changes that we can make based on all the information that we have. So I guess that would be my goal, is that we just try to seek to understand all aspects of this. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. One question that I have for the group is that I know that one of our voices at the Board of Education is pretty staunch on really wanting us to consider really taking a deep dive into any volunteers that we would have for the committee that were saying that they are Native American. And in my opinion, if we have a volunteer, a taxpayer, a member of our community that tells us that they're Native American, that's good enough for me. I don't know that I'm interested in asking someone for DNA samples or blood quantum or anything of that nature. So
I'm not, certainly, Kenny, Dr. Lee, I'm not supportive of asking anybody for any kind of proof of what they state. That they come forward and they tell us what they tell us, and if it's not true and it's found out later, that's something that they would have to deal with. That's not, in my mind, that's not our responsibility to look into every single person. We don't do that for any other committee, and I don't suggest that we do that for this one.
I agree.
I agree.
Right.
okay, that's going to be an issue. And before I push that issue farther, because I've already addressed it, I just wanted to make sure that we were all in agreement with that. So with that being said, then, if you have any other further comments, let me know. Otherwise, early next week, we'll send out the communication. I'll work with Brent on this. And as a board member, if you're interested, please contact Mr. Brozovich, and we'll start moving forward early next week.
Actually, Dr. Lee, we've asked that question now a few times. Ms. Rechko is the only one that's reached out that wanted to participate in that, as well as myself. So if there's somebody else that feels more strongly about wanting to do that, let me know. Otherwise, I think we got our board covered. Before we go into policy, and I know we have a couple of attendees on here as well. And I apologize, folks, but we need to take about a short break to go into executive session and take care of some things, and then we will be back. I would check back probably around 6:30.
Mr. Brozovich, they can just stay in because we've got a separate link for executive session.
There you go. You guys just wait patiently. Thank you. So at this time, I'd like a motion to adjourn open committee meeting and move to closed session.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions?
I just want to clarify real quick. I'm sorry to interrupt. Is it okay to dismiss Mr. Passetti for the evening?
Yeah, I don't think we need him for anything, do we?
No.
Thank
Have
you,
a good
Joe.
evening.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Passetti.
you.
Thank you.
All right, so we're out of here.
Thanks.
Okay. We all make it? Okay, hold on.
Yes.
Yeah, let me get back onto our, okay, so we're back in open session. I'm just trying to pull the agenda up here.
Brian, do you have control of the screen? You can put the agenda up if they'd like.
I've got it here. So
Okay.
where are we at here on the agenda? I don't know.
We're ready for policy.
Okay, so let's go ahead and start our policy. We have press packet 106.
Yes, we do have press packet 106, and next Wednesday we'll approve 103, 104, and 105. So then we'll be able to automatically update those with the Press Plus. That'll be our first one. We did have a new press packet, which is 106, that did come out a couple of weeks ago. Mr. Troy and Mrs. Ward and myself all attended a webinar about it. It's very light reading compared to normal press packets because there's not a lot going on in Springfield right now. So as you take a look at it, if you have any questions, let me know and I'll explain it. And other than that, we'll have first reading next week. As part of our Press Plus subscription that we have now, then they also go through and review all of your collective bargaining agreements and then match those up with policy as well, and then make any adjustments to policy that they would recommend. There are two small adjustments that we would ask that you use for a first reading next Wednesday as well with Press Packet 106. As you guys take a look at those, if you have questions, just let me know.
Okay, and then that's the additional one. Is that what you?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and then so we have the snow, so we have building and grounds, which is the snow removal bid update.
Yes, we talked last about sending out a bid for our snow removal services. As you recall, last year we did a bid and the low bidder was Roberts, who was our current provider. As we reached out to Roberts to ask them if they were interested in bidding this year, they said certainly they would, but they would also, we didn't want to go out to bid, they would hold their prices the same as last year. Roberts has been a good provider to us, and so my recommendation would be to award a 1 year to have them do it on the same terms as they did last year as well, if that's acceptable to the board.
I'm fine with that.
I'm
Yeah,
fine
I think
with that.
that's, I'm also fine with that.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have finance.
So in your package, you have the financial report. The revenues for the month of November were approximately $952,000, and expenses were a little bit higher this month. In November, were $6.2 million. That was the significant jump was because of a bond payment of approximately $2.7 million. So for the month of December, we had a deficit of approximately $5.2 million. However, year to date, we're running a surplus of approximately $1.1 million. So we're in good shape in tracking according to budget. Our annual budget, we're budgeting a deficit of $7.8 million, but that's largely because of our bond projects that we're doing for HVAC and life safety. Without those payments, that we would be running a small surplus. I've showed you the revenues, expenses for each of the funds, as well as the fund balances. And as you can see, our fund balances are healthy, and so we're on good track for the rest of the year. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Let's see, what's next here?
The levy.
Let's see, hold on one second. Okay. So is that You, John, you gonna go over that with us?
Sure. I presented the levy to you at the last meeting. I published the levy for in the newspaper, so we will have a levy hearing next week, and we'll go from there. The levy has approximately 9.76 percent increase, and I've held the tax rate the same as it was last year. So the tax rate will be the same or even a little bit lower because of the property values increasing, but we've tried to keep that tax rate as close as possible to where it has been.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Next we have the Central Campus Intercom replacement.
Yes, let me get back to that. 1 second. Our intercom system at the Central Campus is quite old, and I had Jim Kelly look into what it would take to fix it versus, replacing it. And there's a couple things there. He's had over 10 calls for services so far this year on that intercom, and to adjust the clock for that system, because it does control all the clocks in the building. We have to have somebody come in and work on it, and they have to send a specific person in because the technology is so old. There's only 1 or 2 people at the company that understand how to fix it. So we're looking at replacing the system, and it's a good time to replace it because one of our projects for next year will be doing a lockdown system. And that lockdown system for school shooter safety, things like that, needs to interface with the intercom system. It needs to interface with the door lock systems. And our company that we use for the door locks is ITR, and they will have offered, gave us a quote for installing a new intercom system with us. Jim Kelly and myself went out to Morris and looked at their system, their lockdown system, which interfaces with a very similar intercom system, and it was a really nice system. So the first step would be to install the intercom system this year, and then the next step would be in the summer to install that lockdown system so we know that it can interface with this type of system. So the one that we're recommending is ITR, and it's just a slightly more expensive than the other quote we had. And the reason we think this one is a better option is first, it's an analog and digital option. Plus it allows a lot more data points. It allows up to 1,200 points. We're very limited right now. We're using 196 of the 200 data points that the system provides, and the quote that we got from First Security only has 200 data points. So if we wanted to put multiple strobes in places in classrooms, et cetera, for the lockdown system, we would be very limited. With the system that ITR is recommending, we'd have over 1,200 endpoints, more than enough to thoroughly design our lockdown system without any constraints like that.
Can you tell me what that price was again? I don't have my.
Sure. The price for the ITR system.
30, was it 32?
32,725,000 versus First Security for 32,088. Now this would fall under the technology exception for the bidding requirements under the state code. Anything for data processing, telecommunications, software, and related interconnect systems is exempt from the bidding requirements, although we certainly want to bid it out. But we do like the ITR system for the fact that they are a partner with Rival 5, who is our telephone system and provides our telephone service. They also provide the lockdown system that we went to see at Morris. So all of these things are interrelated. And so this is the first step in getting that system in place.
And this fits into our budget?
It does. I've budgeted in safety and security for this year and for this summer approximately $90,000. So this fits nicely within that budget.
Okay.
What about South? Are we okay at South?
South, we're fine. We have The intercom system here is no problem. It's the central is the one that's the issue.
Will they then have the same system?
There'll be similar systems, not the same, but similar. But we can interface with the system here at South with no problem.
Okay.
The lockdown system will be the same at both campuses.
Okay.
Okay, does anyone have any other questions?
Are we approving that next week?
We'd like to approve that next week to allow them. They do have some timelines as far as ordering and things like that. And we do want to get this system installed this year to set us up for our future projects in the summer.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else? Or is that it? I didn't see anything else on the agenda.
That's it this evening.
Wow.
Okay, so can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Meeting's over.
Okay.
Have a good
You
evening,
guys have a good
everybody.
evening.